Mental levels of stupid, as this government is now preparing emergency plans because of the influx of private school children that are having to leave the private school sector to state schools because they haven't accounted for how many children are going to have to make the move. Now, the initial government estimates, now you'll obviously think about the initial government estimates being what they are, estimates by the government, is perhaps not taking into account the full extent of the impact that this is likely to have, are already in the thousands in the initial influx and many tens of thousands over the medium to long term. So welcome back to the channel. I hope you've had a nice Christmas, but for many people the nice Christmas bit hasn't really lasted very long, because come 1st of January many children are going to have to make the move to a school, or are going to be without a school at all because there are no state school places available for them. Now, I find it absolutely preposterous that the government is having to make emergency plans to respond to a policy that it created, which is absolutely divisive and frankly somewhat evil, to target children, to essentially force them to make the move. Now, there is a legal case being brought by way of judicial review on the basis that it is a protected human right, the right to education, and that this policy may be discriminatory in that it disproportionately affects and therefore discriminates against many different children. Particularly, by way of example, there will be children with special education needs and children of faith schools, which obviously will be disproportionately affected because the entire school will be affected if they go to one of those schools. And not only are there estimates of how many children might have to move, but what they haven't accounted for and can't possibly have accounted for, in my personal view, is how many of those schools will be forced into closure. Now, some of those schools will try to adjust their pricing accordingly so that the fees are not passed on in full to parents, which will have a massive hit on the school, which long term it may threaten the survival of the school. Many of them, of course, have no choice but to pass on the full costs, which are in the thousands per term. So you're looking at, £5, £10, £15,000 per year that people just simply don't have. However elitist some people think private schools are. The vast majority of private schools are simply not elitist in that sense. They are just people working very hard to give their children an alternative education that they so choose. And that's where it comes in with this judicial review claim. Now, the Chancellor has a chance to respond to this claim in the way that any other claim they would. That will then likely lead to a judicial review hearing hopefully early next year. But again, back to how many of these schools may end up closing. Now, obviously, if a school closes, it's not just a few hundred or whatever children that have to leave those schools, but every child at that school will have to move somewhere else. And where are they going to go? Because I know for a fact that many, many hundreds, if not thousands of people have left comments and written in to confirm to me that they've been ringing around their local schools. They've been speaking to local authorities. The local authority has said speak to the school. The school have said we've got no places, find another school or speak to the local authority, and they've gone round in circles. And some places, such as Surrey and Woking, have got 0 places available in years 9, 10 and 11, and I dare say this is probably the case around the country, but many places have just not confirmed as much. But as I say, if some of these schools close, then the whole school worth of children are going to have to find somewhere else to go. And that's just not possible. Now, above the fold in a scathing article by The Times, it says, if there were an award for the minister presiding over the most wrong-headed policy agenda, it would surely go to Bridget Phillipson, despite some of the competitive performances from her colleagues. Just 6 months into the role, the Education Secretary's end-of-term report card is an alarming record of unforced errors with warning signals of worse to come. This is, of course, referring to other things such as shifting funding that was otherwise aimed at free schools, and other areas such as shifting the focus of the curriculum from things such as museum visits and replacing it with workshops on graffiti. Make of that what you will. I find that a little bit odd, frankly. Now, just to drive home the impact and the risk to these schools is twofold. One of which, the speed with which this policy is being brought in, which will play into the judicial review claim, which I'll come back to in a moment, and the fact that this government simply cannot understand, even if it really wanted to, simply cannot understand the budgeting and the commercial running of those schools. Because it simply won't have access to the books and the financing and the commercial management of the school, and even if it did, they won't be able to do that for all of them, and they've got no jurisdiction to do so. So they are putting them at risk without being able to ascertain what commercial risk there is to that school. And also the budgeting for these schools is done in advance, not just 1 or 2 months before new policies come in and hit them with 20%, but typically the previous summer. So they will plan for the following year, because obviously an academic year and everything else, they've got lots of things to prepare for. They would have made their plans and their budgets and everything else long before this policy was really coming into any likelihood of coming into being. Now, not only that, coming in halfway through the year and with the amount of schools hitting the government with registration applications for VAT, and many people reporting that they just simply don't have a number, a VAT number, and thus they are struggling to even account for the VAT in the first place. This is all recipe for disaster. Not to mention that bringing this in halfway through a term is obviously disruptive to the school in the way it provides for those children, but also the children that have to move because it's come in halfway through the term. So as I say, for a government to have to bring in emergency plans to deal with the fallout of a policy that it created to rush through at record speed is frankly ludicrous and screams to me personally a government that has no clue what it's doing. Now, just to round off what I'm saying and to address some of those that don't like the quote-unquote political content and think that this should only be about law exclusively, this is about the law, because this is very much a legal policy that they are required now to pay VAT, and there are legal aspects to it because there's this pending judicial review on the basis that it might be discriminatory and therefore unlawful. If that were to be successful, by the way, the court might make a ruling that this new policy is incompatible with the Human Rights Act, which gives rise to the European Convention on Human Rights and all of the rights therein. And that includes the right to education. And that is that the government cannot take steps to implement law and policy that infringes on that right. So when the government imposes laws such as these, they don't just have a direct effect on a certain group of people, but they have an effect on everybody throughout the country, whether that is direct or indirect. And those policies may well be unlawful, and they are open to challenge. And so it is things like this that I feel necessary to talk about on this channel, because some of these legal implications have a massive effect on people, not just in the sense of getting out of a parking ticket or challenging someone that hasn't paid your invoice or anything of that nature, but these have a very real effect on lots of people around the country. And it is an alarming number of people that will directly suffer as a result of this policy and indirectly suffer as a result of this policy. And that is, of course, worth being held to account. But the most ridiculous thing is if this government is having to draw up emergency plans to deal with the fallout of its own policy. So if you've been affected or you're worried about this policy, do let me know your story and send me some documents confidentially, of course, and I won't repeat any names on here, to contact@blackbeltbarrister.com. I'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, please do like the video and subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching.
I tell you who else might get a little mention this morning. It's Santa's grim helper. And who is that? It's Sadiq Khan. Because it wouldn't be Christmas without Sadiq Khan, would it? Did you see that he went to Tooting Bec Lido yesterday? Because apparently there's a tradition at Christmas that some people go swimming in the Lido on Christmas morning. I mean, if there's ever any excuse to want to hold your head under the water and drown yourself, it would be the prospect of seeing those two little undersized feet coming to the side of the pool, wouldn't it? Seeing Sadiq Khan in his sort of, I think he wears those buffalo trainers the Spice Girls used to wear to make himself look a bit taller. So you sort of see them on the side of the pool and you say, you know what, who needs oxygen? Who needs oxygen? So the reason I bring up Sadiq Khan is because joining me in the studio. I have no title for what you are. What are you, Matthew Goodwin Freeman?
Just a bit of everything.
You're just can we have a title for Matthew, please? He's a political commentator.
Commentator, local councillor, and all-round funny guy.
Well,
Let's see. Let you judge. You judge.
That. So you were a councillor. Are you still a councillor?
I'm still a councillor up in Harrow.
In Harrow?
Yeah.
And for what party?
For the Conservative Party.
For the Conservative Party.
Which will be relevant for some of the stories we're going to talk about later, I'm sure.
Well, absolutely. I mean, well, you know, how relevant are the Conservative Party now?
That's
that is a story in
That's
itself.
That's the question.
Now, the reason I brought up Sadiq Khan...
my favourite friend.
Your favourite friend is because, of course, you are the councillor responsible for the petition that is against him getting this apparent knighthood.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yep, correct.
So that's you.
Yep.
So why did you come up with a petition to say that he shouldn't be getting a knighthood?
So pretty much like everybody, scrolling through and saw the reports that apparently in the New Year's honours, Sadiq Khan's going to be getting the top gong and becoming Sir Sadiq Khan, and my stomach turned. I couldn't believe it. I thought it wasn't real. And so I was sitting in bed with the missus and I told her, and she just thought must be a cruel joke. And everyone loves a petition at the moment. We had the Caller General election one hit 3 million the other day, and I thought, you know what, I'll start one of my own. So I started a quick petition, Stop Sadiq Khan's knighthood, went to bed. Next morning, about 5,000 signatures. A couple of days later, 10, 50, 100, and I set the task of let's get to 200,000 by Christmas, and we got there just before, about 3 days beforehand, and we just hit 202,000, I think, this morning.
202,591 as we speak. Now, Sadiq Khan, well, firstly, you said you felt a sickness in your stomach when you heard that he was going to be becoming Sir Sadiq. Was it the same sort of sickness you get when you have to hand over £12.50 for your most polluting vehicle that solves climate change when you do so?
Of course, because where I am actually a councillor in Hatch End, you can turn left on some roads and you are out of the ULEZ zone and you're in that apparent thick, smoggy, dirty pollution air, and you turn right on some roads and bam, you're in this clean, crisp, crystal London air, that 1250 source. I mean, it's just a complete farce.
Don't forget there were unicorns and
I hadn't spotted them yet. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's just the whole reason about doing this petition is that his track record doesn't deserve him getting a knighthood. Crime is 20% higher than anywhere else in the UK. The trains are always on strike, but you promised us there'd be 0 days. He's had 140. Knife crime is absolutely through the roof, and we've got teenagers being killed on our streets. Every metric you look at, he's failing as mayor.
He lies a lot as well.
And gets away with it.
He really does. He gets away with it an awful lot. I think that he is the Boris Johnson of the Labour Party, actually, the way in which he... I mean, I don't know if you're a Boris fan or not. I never was. Because of just the outright audaciousness of the lies. But and Sadiq Khan, but he doesn't get held to account in the way in which others do. And I get really frustrated, actually. I don't knock the BBC for the sake of it. I really don't. I loved Gavin and Stacey last night. I loved EastEnders. I love a bit of EastEnders at Christmas. I like the BBC, but I do believe it needs some changes.
Yeah.
But one of the things that really frustrates me, and I know that they're catering to the kind of audience that they enjoy having, because of course London is quite left-leaning, but I always find it really frustrating that when there is, especially a BBC London report on Sadiq Khan, that it's such a puff piece. It's always a real puff piece. And I'm not saying it to try and just completely knock BBC London. I think that there are some really hard-working people there. But as our local London station, either be radio or television, Sadiq Khan should not be retweeting TV news reports by BBC London because they're so favourable. And sometimes whenever he's doing any kind of launch of a new train or any kind of initiative or anything about the ultra-low emission zone, you can watch the whole report and there won't be one challenging question.
Not a single criticism. Yeah, and this is one of Sadiq Khan's greatest attributes, the fact that he gets away with so much. And I've always said, if it were a Tory or if it were anyone else, they'd be out of office by now, made to go. It's ridiculous.
Chicken and egg thing, though, is it, though? Because the Evening Standard is a little bit guilty of this as well, which is, of course, you know, the big London newspaper. Well, not so big now because most of it's online. But so Ross Liddell, one of their writers, wrote a piece, and it was so bizarre the other day.
Number one.
He absolutely
Loves him.
fawns all over Sadiq Khan.
Yeah.
And but he wrote a piece the other day, and it was so bizarre because in the piece it's why Sadiq Khan deserves his knighthood, and the piece went through everything that you said. Well, okay, look, crime is failing, and no one wants the ultra low emission zone, and every metric of burglaries are up, and all of these things. But he did win 3 elections, and he does dress really nicely, and so he's a good representative for London, so that's why he deserves it. No. And you think, well, I dress quite nicely sometimes.
There you go. So, Chris,
I would say the same about you, but that jumper is
it's a tree Rex. What do you expect? A tree Rex.
Tree Rex.
That's the there you go. Now it makes sense.
Right. Well, I still better with Right. Now,
fines and alike. Is there a feeling in these communities, Nigel, that this government just doesn't get the countryside?
Oh, I think hunting is frankly the tip of the iceberg. We've got the attack on the small farm. There is no question their calculations over the number of family farms that would have to be sold off is completely out of kilter with reality. There's also a plan for government reorganisation. So mostly we have a county council and a district council. And the district councils, obviously in areas like this, have rural concerns for rural communities. Things like buses, phone connectivity, uniquely rural problems.
As we chat, Nigel, just get Oliver, our cameraman, to get some shots around here. It's worth just showing all of the local people, young children and alike, who are all out here. You were saying about...
Yeah, so if we finish up with unitaries, what will then happen is the politics of areas like this, for local stuff that really matters, will all be dominated by the big cities. And once again, the rural community is being shut out. So yes, the countryside, it really is under attack. There are too few people to stand up and defend it. But fascinatingly, Labour have about 100 MPs representing constituencies like this. And I think it's one of those areas where voter pressure, farmer pressure can be brought to bear.
So do you think now, given the sort of the way in which the party, the parliamentary party, is made up, which is, as you say, different to perhaps traditionally how we've seen Labour MPs formed, that there's going to be that pressure that's brought to bear that Labour's got to be a bit more cognizant of what's happening in the countryside?
Yeah, I mean, whether you support fox hunting or not, as I say, has now become the tip of the iceberg in a much bigger issue about the way in which rural communities are being shut out, their opinions are being ignored. And we hear a lot about two-tier Britain. Well, this is very two-tier. If you're in the big cities, you matter. If you're living out in villages like this, increasingly it feels like you don't. And I do think, and we've seen the farming protests taking off around the country, peaceful farming protests. I do think you're going to get Labour MPs representing these seats feeling very twitchy.
Well, I was just going to ask you finally on that point about these protests. They've been extremely well behaved, very civilised and indeed enjoying a lot of public support. Do you see perhaps things changing in the year ahead, that maybe that patience is going to run out, that perhaps they'll model themselves a bit more on their cousins in France, for instance?
Well, we're not French, are we? And I just don't...
Heaven forbid.
No, well, quite. No, I don't think it... I mean, there might be one or two. And don't underestimate, there is fear and there is anger about a whole way of life disappearing. No, I honestly believe that the way this wins is to have the silent majority behind you. And I think in this country, anything approaching violence would be a disaster.
Okay, Nigel Farage, thank you for talking to us on GB News, and enjoy the hunt today. Nigel and many others will be following the hounds as they trail hunt across the morning here, and hundreds more gathering in this village to enjoy the spectacle.
Right, we'll hear more from Nigel later on as he reacts to that news that reform has overtaken the Tories when it comes to party membership. Right, we'll get the thoughts now of my panel political commentator Susie Stride and TV personality Ryan Mark Parsons. Susie, ladies first, I'll start with you. How seismic do you think this is? Because we read reports yesterday that there is a new pressure group saying to red wall MPs of the Labour Party that they are concerned about Reform UK on the issue of immigration. So is this a sign of serious intent by Reform to actually challenge the two-party consensus?
I mean, I've said this all along. We have to take very seriously always what the British people are saying. We can't be snobby. We can't, just be like, water for ducks back about these things. Ultimately, Reform are concerning because they are gaining ground. Now, what I don't take is that Nigel Farage is anywhere near to being Prime Minister in 4 years' time. I don't believe that. I just don't think we've ever been a country of extremes. History doesn't show that. However, ultimately, no one knows because in some ways we are in unprecedented times where we've seen things happen that we haven't seen happen before. I think what we can definitely say is that, Nigel Farage is someone to watch and to take seriously. And as I always say, the big parties need to be humble and need to listen as to why their people are not voting for them and are voting for Reform. And that's the key thing, not to get caught up in all the hype. Why are they losing these people?
I mean, Ryan, why do you think that is then? Why do you think the Conservatives are losing support? There'll no doubt be former members of the Conservative Party who have subsequently joined Reform. Why do you think this trend is clearly happening?
I think we've suffered, as in we, the Conservative Party. I've been a member of the Conservative Party since the age of 16. I can't imagine ever leaving the party. And I think a lot of members really struggled with the weak leadership we've had in the past. I'm actually very excited to see what Kemi Badenoch does as leader. I think she's quite measured. I think she's growing confidence at the dispatch box, and I'm looking forward to seeing her flourish in her role over the next few years. But how I see Reform, ultimately they're Conservatives. They appeal to Conservative members. I really see it as a protest party where a lot of Conservatives feel disgruntled. They don't know who to vote for. They feel a bit apathetic. Perhaps they want to exercise their right to vote, but they can't feel like they can vote for the Conservative Party.
One interesting question. There are a few of our viewers in the Your Say saying, I think it was a mistake for Nigel to attend this hunt on the day in which it's announced that they've overtaken the Conservatives as far as membership's concerned. It really does divide people quite spectacularly, the idea of hunting. I'm assuming, Ryan, forgive me for stereotyping you, that you are actually in favour of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think it was a shame, actually, they banned fox hunting back in 2004. I've attended hunts. I haven't ever been on horseback, but I think it's a wonderful tradition that we have in this country. A lot of left-wing nutters want to eradicate everything good about this country. They want to eradicate every single tradition that we uphold, and I think it's bonkers now. The Labour government are going to attack rural communities yet again by trying to ban trail hunting. I mean, it's absurd.
Susie, I assume you don't agree with that sentiment.
I don't agree with that. I mean, look, I think this is a great country, the greatest in the world. But what makes our country great is not fox hunting. It's a whole lot of other things. It's our schools, it's our universities, it's our way of life. It's the fact that all major democracies, actually, there's something that, the fact that, we've got some of the lowest levels of corruption in the world. Our legal system, now, all of these things have been under strain under the last couple of decades. But, especially when you visit other countries, which I'm not going to name what countries I visited, you think, I come back to this country, even America, and I was like, thank God for this country. We don't have the levels of homelessness they have there, and even the fact that, you've got to put your credit card if you've got a health bill, if you hurt your foot playing football or rugby or whatever. Football and rugby are two other great things about this country. I just don't put fox hunting, and I'm going to be honest with you, I just think the vast majority of Brits do not put it on their list of this is what makes us great.
I agree with that. And, a lot of viewers who are natural supporters saying the optics of it don't look great. I mean, I think Nigel is a champion of those rural communities that you speak of, and there is a real concerted effort to attack them. So we'll come back to my wonderful panel in just a moment. Thank you very much to Ryan and Susie there. Right, now shoppers across the country will be waking up early this morning hoping to grab a bargain in the Boxing Day sales. Now, the tradition began in the 90s when Prime Minister John Major relaxed Sunday trading laws and allowed shops to open on bank holidays. But it's feared the sales could be dying out, along with our high streets, with both Next and M&S announcing they won't be opening. Well, GB News' very own West Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, is on Nottingham High Street for us. Will, I assume it doesn't look like it's dying out there where you are, does it?
Yes, well, it's busy right now, just past midday. Some 22 million people are expected to take part in the Boxing Day sales. Of course, a large chunk of that now is online shopping. Only around 14 million people out of that 22 million are real physical shoppers heading out to their high street like this one in Nottingham to grab a bargain, to get an item on the sale and sometimes save 30, 40, 50 pounds, a little bit more if it's a really expensive technology item. But the big reflection that I'm hearing from the people that have been in Nottingham today is that those early risers, the people that are on the high street queuing up from 6 a.m. or sometimes in the past even earlier, just isn't there this year. And that's really because those big department stores like John Lewis, like Marks and Spencer's and Next have decided to stay closed this year, along with a whole host of other shops. Lush and other beauty brands like Superdrug have seemed to be really popular here this morning. It's expected to be around £4 billion that will be spent during the Boxing Day shopping season, and it'll be about £236 on average per shopper that they'll be spending. I've been hearing from people that most people are just trying to get a bargain, but a lot of people are actually quite happy just to be out here spending their Christmas money. And I've been speaking to a few of the people who were here bright and early, making sure that they had the first place in the queue today on Boxing Day.
Used to be a big Next sale, and you used to see loads of people here, walking past at 6 o'clock going to the Next. But yeah, they've knocked it on the head, and I've been doing this for about 6 years now, queuing up.
Yes, well, a lot has changed in the decades over Nottingham's shopping. It seems that a lot of people in Nottingham are still coming out today, still looking to grab a bargain. And while sales are expected to be up compared to pre-COVID years, a lot of the sales are online, with fewer people coming out to the high street, even when it's quite mild like it is today and has been this Christmas.
All right, Will, thank you very much for that update there from Nottingham High Street on Boxing Day sales. And, well, some viewers are split, rather, on that particular issue, arguing that some of them out there today need to find something else better to do with their time. Well, let's talk to the TV personality Ryan Mark Parsons and the political commentator Susie Stride. I mean, does it appeal to you, Ryan, getting yourself out there and heading the shops?
Well, I used to work in Harrods a few years ago when I was in my A-levels, and I remember it was always carnage. And I never particularly enjoyed working on Boxing Day, especially there. I mean, they used to have a huge, spectacular event to celebrate the Boxing Day sales, but I think they've scaled that back in recent years. But I think more people need to get out there, support local shops, independent stores, visit your high street as much as possible. I think there is a growing tendency now to just sit on your sofa, open up Amazon or other apps and just order online, and that's it. But we need to make an actual effort to support independent stores to keep them alive.
Susie, I mean, that's a good point, is it not? Use it or lose it, you could say.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't buy any clothes online at all, because for me, I like to try them on. And for me, I don't ever think... You're never going to see the absolute movement of everyone to online, because there's always going to be a whole group of people that want to try a pair of shoes on, that want to, you know, and also just the atmosphere. I love Christmas shopping. I was at Oxford Street a couple of days ago.
Wow.
And all the lights and...
You must be mad.
It was completely mad, but I was like Bond Street and the lights and all the angels, and it is so beautiful. And we've got these, you know, we've got great shopping places, you know, Lakeside and whatnot, and Westfield. And so, but personally, I do Boxing Days sales. I've been doing it for 20 plus years. Obviously, I'm here today.
Have you noticed a change in it?
Oh, yeah, massive. Oh, yeah, massive. Like, back in the day, we'd be getting up at, like, 6 a.m. to be there to queue for Next, you know. And then, like, you know, as time goes on, you're like, no, I've got more money. I don't really need to be doing this anymore. I'm not getting up at 6 a.m. Usually, traditionally, we go on a walk on Boxing Day to Greenwich, which is lovely, but I've not done that because I'm here today. I don't know if I'll always do it, but for the next few years, I'll be doing it.
And Ryan, do you think actually it's the internet that's meant that the likes of Marks and Spencer and Next won't actually be opening their doors? That's a pretty big departure from the past, not too distant past.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think the internet is definitely the main cause of that. And to be honest with you, I'm not even motivated by Boxing Day sales. I think throughout the year, on the internet, there's always some kind of discount. You know, there's a discount code here or there. So the Boxing Day sales, for me, I'm not really incentivised to get up really early in the morning or travelling into central London to face the Selfridges queue or anything like that on Oxford Street. But yes, I think the internet is the cause.
All right, thank you very much there. That's Ryan and Susie. We'll be coming back to them after this short break. Fairy Fitzy wants me to point out that Nigel is attending a trail hunt, Nigel Farage that is. No fox is killed, an animal scent is spread throughout the countryside and the dogs follow that, but not a fox. Fair enough to you, Fairy Fitzy. Right, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on the show. Have you had an argument this Christmas? Find out how to resolve those conflicts after this.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Our next guest has a rather unique career story. She was working at a pub aged 18 and Holly Farmer was spotted by a modelling scout and it turned out to be her lucky day.
Scott Yoss Clark sent this message to Holly.
Holly, 18, 5'10", she does not belong in a pub. And I absolutely love that, Holly, because it's a bit like Dirty Dancing, where it's like, you can't put baby in the corner. Holly does not belong in a pub. You belong on the catwalk. What was that moment like for you when you were scouted by Yoz?
It was crazy. I have to say I wasn't expecting it, to be honest. Like, I was just on my lunch break. I was working at a pub, so... yeah, I was on my lunch break walking, going to Primark and...
You're going to Primark?
Got stopped by yours.
How did that interaction go?
Well, first question was, how tall are you? So, 5'10".
Very much that.
Yeah, then he gave me his card and asked, like, explained everything, that he's a model scout, obviously.
Yeah, because generally when I scout, especially when I get close to that person, I tend to look in their eyes, and when you see something there, it's like everything works on the face and then the eyes gives you away.
Well, you've spotted a gem in Holly. I mean, you can tell even when you walked in, you are built to be a model.
I did my first fashion week here in London and then went to Paris and it was really fun.
Wow.
Now it's my full-time job. It's a bit crazy, to be honest, to me, like, to be able to say that modelling is my full-time job now. Some brands will ask you to be a bit more serious and then others not so
it depends on the client's request as well. Ellie, give us your best model face, ready? 3, I wonder if we can come back. 3, 2, 1. Very nice.
High fashion. Yeah. But you guys do all, like, contorted moves, don't you?
Yeah.
Like all this high fashion. Do yours?
I'm just permanently living in model
You actually
model
are,
world.
though. He actually
This
does.
is it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Merry Christmas, Britain. Spending Christmas with family and friends is usually something Brits feel pretty excited about. Loved ones, delicious food, champers and party games. What could possibly go wrong? Well, not everyone is lucky enough to get through the festive period without an argument, especially with some people being forced to spend time with a difficult relative in an enclosed space. But once that can of worms is opened and you found yourself at the centre of a historical family dispute, what can you do to turn things around? Well, the etiquette expert Diana Mather joins me now. Diana, thank you very much for your company. Now, this is a common theme, I assume, during the festive period, especially when alcohol is involved in the mix. How can you actually get yourself out of a sticky situation?
Well, I think you have to try and stop it starting in the first place. So you know those people who are likely to disagree if there's been a problem in the past. So make sure they're not sitting next to each other and try and get somebody else, in there for the conversation. Once you start hearing anything go wrong, then you've got to go and say, sorry, no, it's Christmas. We're not going to talk about that today. Have another mince pie or have another drink. And so try and keep people occupied, but keep the temperature low, which is not always easy. But as I say, if you know that Uncle Fred always has an argument with Auntie Flo, don't put them near each other and make sure somebody goes in to act as referee.
Yeah, Diana, do you think actually it's just best to avoid topics like politics, for example?
Definitely. The old thing always was, as far as etiquette was concerned, we never talked about politics, religion, illness or money. And actually that's a pretty good rule to stick to. Politics, I think Christmas Day can be a politic-free day. Nobody really wants to know about your operations or how many times you've been to the doctor that week. Religion is a very private topic. And also money. We don't need to talk about money at Christmas.
OK, so, if a fight breaks out on Boxing Day, for example, families gathered, Boxing Day hopefully not turning into actual boxing. But if a heated argument takes place and, you've had one too many words that's actually said that hurts somebody, how do you heal rifts within a family? That is a deeply, deeply unsettling experience for people.
It is. And I think then the host or whoever is in charge has to take charge and say, this is enough. What you've said is unacceptable. And really, if we're going to carry on and we're going to have a lovely afternoon, you've got to apologise, both of you. You've got to say you're sorry and agree not to talk about this again today. Because sometimes, if it's a teenager, you sometimes have to take them out of the room and be quite fierce and just say to them, stop it, don't wind each other up. This is, we're here as a family, let's make it a family day. If it's an adult who should know better, it is more difficult. But again, if you've got much older adults, then sometimes they are less tolerant as they get older. I have to say, I'm more tolerant as I get older, but some people are less tolerant. So you just have to say, look, I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. It's not your business what they're going to do after university or whether their love life is good or not. Don't ask very personal questions, especially to teenagers.
Do you think as a society we've just become snowflakes, for want of a better word?
I think we're in danger of it because everyone's worried about their mental health and their feelings. Yeah. But what we've got to think about is other people's feelings. Never mind my feelings, it's your feelings if I say something awful to you. Or I shouldn't say something if I think about you first. So we've really got to be quite disciplined and think about other people, not just ourselves.
All right, Diana, thank you very much for that advice there. That's the etiquette expert, Diana Mather, joining us down the line. Let's talk to the TV personality Ryan Mark Parsons and the political commentator Susie Stride. Ryan, the fact of the matter is, I've known a fair few Boxing Day arguments in my time. The family get together on Boxing Day. They're probably watching this now. Hello, Nana, if you're watching.
Thank you very much indeed. OK, thank you.
And actually, the fact of the matter is, it is difficult when you mention things like politics, for example. Do you just not bother? I can't imagine you shying away from a confrontation, to be fair.
No, no. And my family are incredibly pugnacious as well. So I think the alchemy, when we're all together in a confined space over Christmas, not just Boxing Day, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, even Christmas Eve, it inevitably turns into an argument. I mean, they've all gone to the Caribbean this year, thank goodness. So I'm away from my whole family. I can spend it with friends, selectively spent Christmas with people that I want to have peace with. And that's quite refreshing, because every year, there's always an argument. I think we break every etiquette rule that was mentioned by Dana. We talk about religion, we talk about money, and we talk about politics, and it always comes up. But yeah, I can see why arguments happen, because you are just all of these big personalities potentially in a family stuck in one room for several hours whilst the dinner's cooking, whilst you're consuming it and everything after. It is a recipe for disaster.
All right. Susie, very brief comments from you on that?
We don't tend to have loads of arguments, but I mean, I think when it's the big Greek family, then maybe there'd be a few more, but only light-hearted, you know.
Okay.
And we do discuss politics. My mum's, a Christian pastor, so we're going to talk about religion,
Wow.
you know. And actually, it's generally fine, and we play games, and we bond over games, and yeah. So I don't think we have these problems, to be honest.
Very
but,
good.
but obviously, lots do.
Yeah, well, they do, yes, yeah, very good stuff. All right, Susie Stride there and Ryan Mark Parsons. Now, here's the Vocal Zone Voice Studio Choir from South Derbyshire with Good King Wenceslas.
Good King Wenceslas last looked out on the feast of Stephen, when the snow lay round about, deep and crisp and even. Brightly shone the moon that night, though the frost was cruel. When the poor man came in sight, gathering winter fuel. Hear the page and stand by me, if thou know'st its telling. Yonder peasant, who is he? Where and what is dwelling? Slightly lives a goodly pence, underneath the mountain, right against the forest fence, by St. Agnes fountain. Bring me flesh and bring me wine, bring me pine-logs hither, thou and I will see him dine, when we get them thither. Aged honor, for they went together, through the ruins of the rent, and the bitter weather. Silent night is darker now, and the wind blows stronger. Fails my heart, I know not how, I can go no longer. Mark my footsteps to my page, tread thou in them boldly. Thou shalt find the winter's rage, breathe the goddess boldly. In his master's steps he trod, where the snow lay dinted. It was in the very sod which the saint had printed. Therefore, Christian men, be sure, wealth or rank possessing, ye who now should bless the poor, shall yourselves find blessing.
Beautiful. That's the Vocal Zone Voice Studio Choir from South Derbyshire there. This is Merry Christmas Britain. Lots more coming up on today's show, including a look ahead to today's horse racing. And we're not talking politics this time. First, though, it's the news with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It is 12:37 exactly. Well, the top story this lunchtime. Reform UK's membership has overtaken the Conservatives just months after Nigel Farage's return as the party leader. Their tracker showed more than 132,000 members by midday today. That's a 300% surge since Farage's comeback in June. Younger supporters, cheaper fees and frustrations with the Tories are driving growth, as Farage claims reform is the future of British politics, he says. The Conservatives last reported around 120,000 members in November, but have faced criticism for lack of direction under Kemi Badenoch. Well, the leader of the party, Nigel Farage, has been reacting to that news with our Home and Security editor, Mark White.
Incredible. Over 15,000 people have joined us and given us their 25 quids over the last 4 days. This is an historic moment when the newest party in British politics overtakes the oldest existing political party in the world. Something is happening. So, of course, I'm delighted.
The government is facing mounting pressure to deliver on its promise to ban trail hunting as Boxing Day hunts are gathering across the country today. Campaigners say the practice, which mimics banned fox hunting, is just a smokescreen for illegal activity, citing hundreds of reports of wildlife and public disruption. The Labour government has pledged tougher laws, while ministers say they're considering harsher fines and prosecution for reckless hunting. But the Countryside Alliance defends the practice, saying it's essential for rural life. No timeline, though, has been given for when the crackdown will take effect. 20 years on from the Boxing Day tsunami, victims and survivors are being remembered today. The 2004 disaster, triggered by a 9.1 magnitude earthquake, sadly killed over 230,000 people across 14 countries, displacing nearly 2 million people. Sir Keir Starmer has joined tributes with commemorations being held in Indonesia's Aceh province, where thousands of unidentified victims are buried. Ceremonies are also taking place today in Sri Lanka, where 35,000 people sadly died. And Boxing Day shoppers are avoiding the high street, with footfall down over 12% compared to last year. That's according to early data. Retail parks have fared slightly better, but overall activity across UK retail destinations is more than 10% lower than 2023. Analysts are blaming the shift to online shopping, rising costs for physical stores and changing habits being driven by year-round promotions. Barclays estimates we'll be spending, though, £4.6 billion, most of it, though, online. Well, our reporter Will Hollis is on the high street in Nottingham for us, and he has more on what people are spending today.
We're expected to see about 22 million people shopping for Boxing Day sales, but only 14 million of those shoppers will actually be real people on the high street. That good chunk of about 8 million people will just be people that will be logging on online, tapping away and making their purchases online, because, as we say, many of the big retailers are staying closed. They would cite that it's because they want people to have more of a family experience, let their staff rest.
That's the news on GB News. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at 1 o'clock, and Darren will be straight back after this short break.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. This festive season is less white and more grey for many of us, quite overcast scenes throughout the rest of Boxing Day. We have a cold front pushing its way into the north. This has been bringing outbreaks of rain for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some of those quite heavy first thing this morning for Northern Ireland, but generally the front will be steadily moving its way northward, so it should turn drier into the afternoon here. But for much of Scotland, away from the far north, it is going to be a fairly damp and drizzly scene throughout much of today. For England and Wales, there is quite a lot of cloud around. This has lowered quite a bit to produce quite extensive areas of haze and mist around, even some localised fog in places as well, reducing visibility, so it is worth taking care when you're travelling. The best of some sunshine for parts of Yorkshire up towards Northumberland, and also for the far north of Scotland, the Northern Isles, perhaps seeing a few clear spells in there at times, but some cooler conditions here, temperatures only seeing highs of 8 degrees Celsius. As we move throughout this evening and overnight, this rain band will still be in play for areas of Scotland, perhaps again just skirting its way further northwards across the Highlands, parts of Lewis and Harris, maybe fringing into areas of Orkney as well come the early hours of Friday morning. That cloud, though, is going to be really quite persistent everywhere else. Again, lowering, produce mist, hill fog, very murky to start off Friday morning. Again, there could be some slight travel issues if you are out and about first thing. Temperatures, though, not too chilly at all, mostly between 4 and 6 degrees Celsius. On Friday, it is relatively a very similar picture for most of us. The rain band, at least, though, will weaken, so the rain will be lighter and patchier for areas of Scotland. Some patches of drizzle are possible elsewhere, particularly over higher ground around some coastal districts. Otherwise, though, it's going to be very grey, overcast. Temperatures lowering because of that lack of sunshine, generally around 6 to 9 degrees Celsius. A touch more brightness possible at times over the weekend, but it does turn more unsettled as we head towards New Year. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Merry Christmas, Britain. It's time now to go through all the latest sports news with the sports broadcaster, Aidan McGee. Aidan, Merry Christmas, my friend.
Merry Christmas to you, Darren. Great to see you, mate.
Now, tell me, first of all, going through all of the kickoffs that are taking place today, it's a heavy footy day.
Yeah, it's a huge period for football anyway, isn't it? I mean, they often say that league titles and relegation issues are not completely defined, but you learn a lot about your team when you play a lot of fixtures in a short space of time. It tests your resources, it certainly tests your squad. If you lose 3 games over that period, then you're looking at a pretty bleak January, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Pep Guardiola, I mean, when I think of him, I think of winning.
Success, completely, yeah.
But that ain't happening at the minute. What's gone wrong at Manchester City?
Well, he's never had a run like this he started at Barcelona, I remember him taking over there in 2008. So what's that? Almost getting on for 20 years, isn't it, really, of his managerial career. It's 850-odd games. He's never known a period like this. And I wonder if there's a case that it's a bit of an instance of he's never been in this position before and he's having to learn the job. It's one thing going for Champions League titles, of which he's won 3, Premier League titles, Bundesliga, La Liga, which he's all won. He's won domestic competitions as well. But has he been in a situation where he's been consistently losing games? They haven't had a period like this at City since about 2016. They've lost as many games in the last 12, which is 9 matches in the last 12, as they've done in the previous 106. So that's the kind of drop-off you're talking about. And then some of his behaviour's been a bit peculiar. You saw the nail marks in the bridge of his nose and the marks on his head. I mean, I thought he had a bust-up with a player in the dressing room.
I think something's going on. I think, honestly, there must be something going on.
Well, he's not used to this situation, that's absolutely for sure. Listen, the fans are going to keep faith with him, there's no doubt, but they should beat Everton today. They're 0-0 last we heard, or if they're just joining us, as they often say on the radio vernacular. But there's also this incident of he brought the players in last night to sleep at the training ground ahead of today's game. Now, he'll probably argue, if anyone asks about it in the press conference afterwards, that look, it's an early kick-off, but you don't normally do that for a home game, Darren, and that would annoy the players having to go in and sleep at the training ground in these sleep pods there on Christmas Day. Pep Guardiola may be justified in saying, well, look, we're on a losing run, we've got to try and do something different. As his opposition manager, Sean Dyche, said today, these players haven't turned into bad players overnight, but something's got to give.
And speaking of another manager, Frank Lampard, obviously the name itself has recognition.
Absolutely.
But actually, we're learning quite quickly that name recognition don't make an automatically great manager, does it?
I think it was George Graham who said to me maybe 20 years ago, just as he was leaving the game, actually, he said, the first thing you've got to do as a manager is forget the player you were.
Right.
And I think some of these elite players, we mentioned Wayne Rooney, who's going up against Frank Lampard today, have real trouble doing that, Darren, because they're coaching players on the training pitch that will never be able to do what these top players are able to do. And I think it's frustrating for some of them, but honestly, you look at the number of great players who make great managers down the years, It's not been that many. You look at the 66 team in England.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can count Jack Charlton maybe as one, but Alan Ball had some success and some dismal jobs at other places. The rest of them achieved very little.
It doesn't naturally transfer.
It's a different
not
skill set.
automatically, yeah.
Skill set.
Right, give me the horse racing and give me the darts. What's going on?
So I'll do the horse racing first of all. Huge day as well in the calendar for horse racing. We've got the King George VI Chase at Kempton.
Have you put a bet on?
No, I haven't actually. But I mean, if I was going to offer anyone a tip, it would be Spillane Tower, trained by Jimmy Mangden for JP McManus, ridden by Mark Walsh. This is a hunt race, of course, very much under threat in the last few years, as Nigel was saying earlier on, just the concept of hunting and, and the cruelty to animals. Certainly some of the animal rights protesters have had their say in the last 5-6 years. It's affected the national. But I would go for that one. 10-3 you can get with some bookies. It's underway at 2:30. Corbett's Cross is not a bad bet as well, ridden by Derek O'Connor, but it's a huge day just in general. There are races at Aintree, Fontwell Park, Market Raisins, Sedgefield, Wetherby, Wincanton. That's a flat race, and Down Royal in about 20 miles outside Belfast, which my dad used to go to when he was a little boy.
And
the darts. I love that. Look, Luke Littler is in action on Saturday, and he's the favourite. I was there last Sunday watching the Arrows. What an event it is, Darren. It's just so good. I mean, so many years ago they were talking about, Barry Hearn said to me, we're taking it from the Circus Tavern to the Alexandra Palace. That was 800 people capacity to 6,000. I said, it will never work, Barry, because you won't be able to recreate the pub atmosphere. I was wrong.
Yeah.
Now they're looking, I think next year will be the last one at Ali Pali. I think they'll look to take it to a stadium. They've got the Premier League meetings all around the country in areas that don't see top-class sport, and I think that Luke Littler has done more for that sport. I can't think of another breakout act quite like that, but he's in action on Saturday against Ian White, and we'll see how he gets on.
He's a superstar.
Without doubt.
I can't believe his age, though, Aidan, to be honest with you. I still don't quite believe it. He does look older than he is.
I want to see his passport.
Yeah, I do. All right, Aidan McGee, thank you very much. Now, my friends, this is Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on the show, including more reaction to the news that Reform UK now has more members than the Conservative Party. See you after this.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
A Jaguar has ditched its growling big cat logo as part of what can only be described as a woke rebrand. The badge that has been used for decades, look at it, beautiful, on the bonnets of luxury cars has been swapped for a curved geometric J badge. They've also released a brand new advert, look at it, for their rebrand, which prompted Elon Musk to ask if the company actually sold cars. I thought this was a wind-up. It's not. It's true. And joining me now to discuss this is the motoring journalist, Amanda Stratton. Amanda, what on earth is going on at Jaguar? The car of James Bond, Batman, Arthur Daley has gone off the scale woke. Please make me make sense of it.
The E-Type is an absolutely iconic car, and it's important that people remember that, in fact, in its heyday, Jaguar was an incredibly prestigious brand, more so really than other British brands like Aston Martin, for example. But, you know, people in the industry are left sort of scratching their heads because you need to do something bold, you need to do something that catches people's attention, but you also need to stay true to who you are and what you are, and I'm not sure that this is it.
Amanda, that could be an advert for anything. It could be cat food. It could be Karl Lagerfeld. It could be literally anything apart from a Jag. Well, I mean, honestly, OK, we're talking about it. So we are talking about it, but we're not talking about it for the right reasons, are we?
And I think if I was going to be speculative here, I would like to think that this is actually all part of a cunning plan to get everybody talking about it. Yeah. So when they do launch the first new car that we're going to see, which, you know, people have been waiting, as I say, since 2001.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Merry Christmas, Britain. Have you got your stirrups, or maybe dressing up in your finest attire is more for you? Well, horse racing, as we were mentioning there with Aidan McGee, it's a huge sporting tradition on Boxing Day. Today, events are taking place in Aintree, Kempton and Wetherby. And our reporter, Doogie Beattie, is at one of the events in Northern Ireland.
Racing will come to an end here at about 3:10. Racing will come to an end about 3:10, and people will be able to go home, enjoy their Boxing Day dinner, take off the glad rags that they've had on display here today. So many well-dressed people enjoying the day, and hopefully they will be back for New Year's Day when racing begins once more.
All right, I love Doogie Beattie, I really, really do. OK, let's have a very brief chat with my panel here, TV personality Ryan Mark Parsons and political commentator Susie Stride. I mean, Susie, horse racing, has it ever appealed to you?
Not really.
No?
Not really, I'm going to be honest with you.
You don't think it's cruel? You're not going to go all vegan on us, are you?
Oh, no, I'm not a vegan. I'm a Greek. We eat meat, you know. We're big meat people.
I have been slightly unkind.
No, I mean, I've never gone, but no, I think there's nothing wrong with, you know, I think it would be quite fun, and people will get dressed up, don't they, and whatnot. It's that bit from My Fair Lady, which is one of the most hilarious, you know, film moments of all time.
I mean, Ryan, where are you at on it? Horse racing?
No, I love horse racing. I think it can be
Do you bet?
Yes, and I think it's such a glorious day out. My favourite horse race, well, in the calendar is probably Ascot, Royal Ascot, and you get dressed and celebrate the occasion. It's marvellous.
All right, thank you very much to my panel there. This is Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. Don't go away, we're going to get you weather, and I'll see you after that.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. If you are planning a Boxing Day walk today, then for some of you I can promise dry conditions. That is all thanks to this area of high pressure out in continental Europe that is stretching its way in across much of England and Wales. But further towards the north, we do have this cold front slipping southwards across Scotland and Northern Ireland. So it is a damper and wetter start to the day here with drizzly outbreaks of rain. To the far north of the Northern Isles, we will see some slightly brighter skies throughout today, a few showers to watch out for, but the winds will be a touch lighter today compared to what we did see on Christmas Day itself. This rain band then is going to be in play across quite a lot of areas of Scotland, so really quite damp and dreary, unfortunately. Certainly raincoats will be needed for any outdoor activities here. Hopefully in Northern Ireland it will turn drier into the afternoon, still relatively cloudy. The best chance of seeing some sunshine is going to be across parts of northeastern England, parts of northeast Wales as well. Might just see a few cloud breaks also. Otherwise, it's quite widespread grey skies for many of us. Temperatures generally around 10 or 11 degrees Celsius as our highs. Into this evening and overnight, that rain band is still in play across the far northwest, still quite damp and drizzly here. Elsewhere, it's a cloudy night. Can't rule out some spots of drizzle also over the higher ground sites, fog in there as well. But with all the cloud around, it's certainly not going to be too chilly. Temperatures holding up in mid-single figures at least. On Friday, well, there's not that much deal of a change. You'll see a lot of widespread cloud around grey skies for many of us. Again, a touch of drizzle possible over the highest sites. Though the rain band across Scotland will begin to fade out a touch more. The rain here generally turning lighter and patchier. The rest of the brightness across parts of the Northern Isles, where here we'll start to see some cooler conditions moving its way in. Is there any chance of some sunshine for other areas? Well, hopefully on Saturday we will start to see more in the way of those sunny spells emerging. But by the time we reach the new working week, it's looking unsettled again. Bye-bye.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's a time for the vegan community to get together, as well as an opportunity for non-vegans to try going plant-based.
Well, joining us now is some of her delicious hummus, and we both love hummus, this is a great thing. This is the founder of Chickpea, Hannah McCollum. Hannah, lovely to meet you. And you've brought in some of your beautiful products in front of you here, so can you talk us through some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a range of chilled hummus, and then latest to the range are a new ambient snack pot, which is a fridgeless hummus that doesn't require refrigeration. But I started Chickpea because of my love for hummus, but also sustainability and reducing food waste and encouraging people to be more plant-based without saying go vegan.
Does normal, say, traditional hummus have anything that's not vegan appropriate in it?
Not really.
No,
I think
it's always chickpeas, olive oil, maybe some other bits.
Yeah, lemon juice, aquafaba or water to help with consistency, garlic, and rapeseed oil or olive oil.
And there's a bit of a misconception about veganism that I hear a lot, where people say, look, I'm not a vegan, I love my steaks, I'll just get out of there now. But there's a misconception that you don't get the protein, you don't get the fats, and you're kind of just eating processed salads and, fake meat and things. But that's not quite the case, especially with chickpeas, right?
Yeah, I think protein is really important, and actually a lot of people think I need a certain amount of fish every week or meat, but actually a lot of the fish and meat that you're eating are eating higher protein foods, so algae, seaweed, pulses, all these types of plant-based foods. For me, veganism is like you could have a delicious rye seeded bread with just loads of roasted vegetables, seeds, tahini sauce on top.
That sounds
and there's nothing beige in there at all.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Merry Christmas, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Boxing Day. I'm Darren Grimes on GB News. Are we witnessing a political earthquake, my friends? Reform UK has overtaken the Conservative Party in terms of membership. So I'm asking, is this a sign that Nigel Farage is destined for number 10 Downing Street? And it's a big day for bargain hunters as the Boxing Day sales start, with Brits expected to spend an eye-watering 3.7 billion quid in this year's sales. The hunt is on. Large crowds are gathering for the traditional Boxing Day hunt. But with campaigners urging the government to ban trail hunting, could this year's event be the very last? And it's a big day in the Premier League, with Man City manager Pep Guardiola looking to turn around his team's fortunes following 9 defeats in 12 matches. Astonishing. Now, send your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. You're all making me very jealous, spending your Boxing Days having fun. How dare you? First of all, we're going to get your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Darren, thank you.